Oh, you're here? I am glad you could make it. Our guest has yet to arrive. He should be along any moment. And it should prove to be a memorable night, one for the ages. Welcome to Saints versus Scoundrels. I'm Dr. Benjamin Weicker. St. Augustine's Confessions. It's an amazing work, one of the most influential books of all time. And I hope you've read it. If not, it's not too late. I've read it I don't know how many times. I used to teach it. Of course, you don't have to have read it to partake of our conversation, so please just relax and enjoy. Saints versus Scoundrels. It's an odd name, isn't it? Especially for St. Augustine, who assures us on page after page of his confessions that he's actually one of the great sinners, the great scoundrels of all time. St. Augustine isn't the only person to have written a Confessions. Centuries after Augustine wrote his Confessions, 13 centuries to be exact, Jean-Jacques Rousseau wrote his Confessions. It was also enormously influential, and it was meant as a direct challenge to Augustine's Confessions. But here's the ironic thing. As I said, on nearly every page, Augustine is confessing he's a scoundrel. And Rousseau, in his Confessions, even while he's busy revealing and confessing seemingly endless scandalous acts in his own life, he assures us he's a kind of a saint. Let anyone dare say, after reading my Confessions, says Rousseau on the very first page, that I was better than that man. Interesting, isn't it? And a good place to begin. Because St. Augustine really is a saint. He's one of the most influential theologians of the Catholic Church. For centuries, he was the theologian. His Confessions is a kind of spiritual autobiography, a search into the depths of his soul, a great probing into his real human, sinful tendencies, his ultimate helplessness, so the ultimate need for God's grace. Millions have read St. Augustine's Confessions, have entered into the depths of his struggles, been led through the darkest recesses of his soul, have seen themselves there as well, seen their own struggles, their own darkness, their own need for the light of Christ. St. Augustine's story is our story, the story of every soul's need for redemption. But it's a love story, a story of how our disordered loves bring us every kind of unhappiness, that our true happiness is only found in loving God. It's not just St. Augustine's story. It's a story of the whole human race, a love story that begins and ends with the love of God for us. And that love story, the story of Christianity, came to define the West. But it didn't always appear that would happen. St. Augustine was born into the Roman Empire in northern Africa, in Thagaste, in 354 AD. Just for reference, that's our modern-day Algeria. That's right, one of the most influential of the Church's theologians was an African, a Berber, that is someone racially with the facial features of a Caucasian, but with very dark skin. Well, in St. Augustine's time, Christianity was still fairly young. The Roman Emperor Constantine had been the first emperor to convert, and that was less than 50 years before Augustine's birth. So by the time of Augustine, much of the empire was still under the sway of ancient Roman paganism. To the people of the time, could have gone either way, towards a retrenchment of Roman paganism or towards Christianization. No one could tell. The Roman Empire of the 4th century was, we might say, balanced between the two. St. Augustine was determined to push it towards Christianity and away from paganism. In the deepest way, we might say that St. Augustine's Confessions was a kind of an argument in the form of an autobiography about why the best that paganism had to offer wasn't enough, and the worst of paganism had to be rejected. Why, for the sake of true happiness of humanity, paganism had to give way to Christianity. Now, St. Augustine was a bit of a scoundrel. He did throw himself into some of the darker aspects of the pagan world. But he also immersed himself in the best the pagan Roman world had to offer, and as profound, as glorious as that was, he found it wanting. It couldn't provide the pleasure, the happiness, the glory, the depth of truth itself that he so deeply desired with his entire soul. Our true citizenship was in the city of God, the New Jerusalem, a city not of this world, but of the next. Only there could our desires be met. Our natural desires had a supernatural destiny. Well, as it turns out, the pagan Roman Empire fell and Christianity rose. Paganism did give way to Christianity. And that was due not only to the pagan empire falling apart, but because Christians did what Christ had demanded. They went out and evangelized. In the West, the result of that evangelization was Christianized Europe. But in early modern Europe, the 1500s, 1600s, and 1700s, there arose those who believed that Christianity had been a big mistake. They rejected Christianity and sided with the ancient pagans again. One such man was Jean-Jacques Rousseau, born in 1672 in Geneva, the city of John Calvin. He was no Calvinist, to say the least. We always associate Calvinism with a kind of super dour, dark pessimism about human nature because of its overwhelming emphasis on our sinfulness. Well, Rousseau wanted no part of that. He wanted us to embrace the world again with a kind of carefreeness of pagans. The whole Christian notion of sin, especially original sin, as St. Augustine had maintained it. That's what Rousseau's confessions and his other writings as well were aimed to undermine. Rousseau believed that we were naturally good, that it wasn't sin, but society itself that made us evil. That's why in his confessions he relates all kinds of deeply scandalous things about his life, and he tries to show that while he may appear to be a scoundrel, he's actually fundamentally naturally good. But he really was a scoundrel. Let's just look at a few obvious examples provided by Rousseau himself from his confessions. There's stealing, lying, trying to seduce married women, living with a woman he wouldn't marry, 5 illegitimate children,